And welcome everyone to another episode of Sharing with Shellshock. I am your host, ShellshockPrime, and I am here tonight with another discussion. This time we are here where we talk about the Nintendo 64. And joining me, we got 3 returning guests and a new one. Mike, we're going to start with you. Good to see you.
Hey, good to be back again. Thanks for having me as always here, Pete.
Yep.
Again, if you guys don't know who I am MMGMike, Mike's Monster Gaming. I do a lot of Nintendo retro variety content. I specialize in kart races and Mario Party, and we also raise money for Extra Life during Mario Party Madness.
Yep. Good to see you, Andy. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, howdy. You want me to tell a bit about myself then?
Go right ahead.
All right. My name is Andy. I am a variety streamer here on Twitch, content creator, what have you. I specialize in more retro gaming. I play a lot in the Switch as well, lots of Nintendo. My whole personality is around Banjo-Kazooie. So that's pretty much all you need to know.
All right, awesome. And Yoshils, good to see you on the podcast again. Tell us about yourself for everybody that's tuning in.
Hello, my name is Yoshils. I am a Yoshi Fox. I'm a collector for about 22 years, and then also I have been at other conventions and stuff. I am a Twitch streamer, and also I have an Instagram and TikTok that I do other things too, but I don't know why I'm here. I'm not a professional, but hey, how you doing?
Again, good to have you. And Rox?
Hi, I am RoxTheCat. I occasionally post stuff on YouTube, but lately I've mainly just been doing art and posting that over on Blue Sky, so go check that out if you want.
Yep, awesome. Yep, so right now here we are. We are going to be talking about the Nintendo 64, which released in North America on September 29th, 1986. No, so 1986, sorry. It released on my 10th birthday. I just realized it released on my 10th birthday. I didn't get it when it came out when I was 10 years old, but I will say I do remember seeing a lot of it. I'll explain more my own personal memories about it in a little while, but all I will say is that it launched with 2 games in North America, and that's Super Mario 64 and Pilot Wings 64. And the console itself decided to still be cartridge-based as opposed to the other 2 consoles being the Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation having CDs. Thinking that CDs would not catch on, but the PlayStation has proven otherwise. But we're here to talk about the N64. So the Nintendo 64 lasted up until sometime in 2002, and the last game for the console released in North America was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3.
Oh, I didn't even know that, actually.
I actually no idea about that either.
And in Japan, the last game was Animal Crossing, or rather, it was known as the Botsu no Mori, or Animal Forest.
I have that.
Yes, that was the last N64 game released in Japan. And right now, we're gonna start it off with you, Mike. When did you get your N64, and what was it like when you played it for the first time?
Well, when I got my Nintendo 64, I just remember opening it up on Christmas. I forgot how old I was, but my aunt literally got me the red controller that I literally still have to this day, that I've been working with since my childhood. And pretty much the first game I ever played on it was, of course, Mario Kart 64, which honestly has been the reason why I'm even a gamer in the first place. So honestly, playing Mario Kart for the first time and just seeing how phenomenal the tracks were really got me into gaming in the first place. And I just remember having a lot of great moments with a lot of the kart racers on the N64.
All right. Awesome. Now, what about you, Andy?
I was actually just looking right before stream. The first time I got a Nintendo 64, Christmas 1996, was my first game for it was Super Mario 64 and Mortal Kombat Trilogy.
Yeah.
First time booting it up and having a game system of my own. It was our first family console. It was kind of a big deal, and it was something that I was able to play with my dad and stuff like that. It was a really good time.
Yep. And what about you, Yoshis?
When I was a wee Yoshi, I got a N64 for Christmas, and me and my brother played Super Mario 64, and it was the best time ever. And then, of course, the second game I played as a kid happened to be Yoshi's Story. So that's actually like truth.
Yep.
Yee.
And Rox?
So I don't remember the exact year I got my first N64, just because I was really little, like I want to say maybe 2-3 years old.
Yeah.
But first time I ever played it wasn't even when I first got my N64s. Before that, we were on a road trip to a casino, and the first game I ever played, period, was Super Mario 64.
Nice.
But the first N64 game I ever actually owned, because my dad picked it up at a pawn shop he was working at the time, was Star Fox 64.
Okay. Those are some pretty good games to start with. So my first N64 experience actually started a few months after release. I remember there was a kiosk in the Toys R Us in late '96. They had Mario Kart 64 there just a few months before the game released. And I remember, because at the time it was already released in Japan, but I remember playing it and I thought it was great. But I also remember playing Super Mario 64 for the first time, and I thought it was incredible back in '96. But I was like, wow, like this is a great console. I would love to get this. I would love to get the N64 someday. And I didn't get one until 2001, because I ended up choosing the Sega Saturn first, which ended up not being the wisest decision, because I got it around the time the Sega Saturn died, and I had no idea that it did. Then I got PlayStation, and then my uncle had an N64 he wasn't using. Like it was a used N64, and he didn't want it anymore. And my brother and I asked if we could have it, which we did, he got it for us. And the first game that we got was Superman 64. That's my first N64 game that I actually owned.
Ooh.
Poor soul.
Yeah, I got rid of it afterwards. But that being said, we got some better games. We got Cruisin' USA. We will later start renting N64 games from Blockbuster. So I rented Pokemon Puzzle League. We rented Pokemon Stadium 2, which we ended up getting that and Stadium 1. We bought Super Smash Brothers, which my brother and I played the hell out of that one. Mario Kart. Let's see. So we got Perfect Dark. We have GoldenEye. I got some of my games here. Some of the games I bought like years later. Like, for example, I recently got Diddy Kong Racing right here. And then I remember one thing I will say is that I remember playing these games. I had Pokemon Snap. I had it, then I ended up not knowing better. I sold it, and then I recently got Pokemon Snap again because I used to have it. Star Fox 64. My brother would borrow games from his friends. He would borrow Yoshi's Story, Star Fox 64, pretty much a lot of the big N64 games. And yeah, N64. My brother and I played it. I will say my brother enjoyed the N64 way more than I did. I enjoyed it, but he loved it a lot more. He would spend a lot of time on it, at least until when we got the GameCube and PlayStation 2. But yeah, so those are how I first found out about the N64. What was it like, and when we got it. So 2001 was when we got the N64, which I still have it. So next up is, what are some of your biggest memories you have with the N64? And Andy, I want to start with you for this one.
Okay. Well, lots of different memories, actually. The Nintendo 64 is kind of, obviously I've had it since 1996. I still play the exact same 64 that I had back then. Just to name a couple things, when I was in college, one of the big things we'd like to do is have game nights. And I found some guys in my dorm who they had a projector in their room, and we played some Smash Bros. And ended up actually turning that into a Smash Fest. We actually had a full esports, I guess, a Smash Bros tournament. That was probably my biggest one. Nintendo 64 associated, Banjo-Kazooie. Obviously one of my favorite video games of all time. I've mentioned it already. The getting to make that community, and kind of the Rare Witch Project, which was a really big forum in the late 2000s, learning about the Stop and Swap, learning about the franchise as a whole, getting into all of that and making that community. I think that's probably my favorite memory. Actually got me into the fan group and into like internet groups in general.
Yeah. Those are some pretty good memories. Yoshils, your turn.
Okay, so some of my memories are from like when I was playing with my family. So like, for example, we were playing GoldenEye 007. We played when we got, well, my cousin actually got the GoldenEye 007 first. We went to his house and it was for Christmas. I think it was the year after or the year of. I don't remember off the top of my head. It depends on when the game came out, but we played the game the entire Christmas day with them.
Yeah.
That was like one that like I always will enjoy, because I haven't seen, like, I don't really get to see my cousins anymore as much. So like a lot of my memories is like with cousins.
Yeah.
And then also is like when I was playing like Super Smash Brothers with friends, and then we used to adventured around when it came to multiplayer games. So like we play like Iggy's Wrecking Ball, and we would do actually Banjo-Tooie multiplayer.
Yeah.
We also played Buck Bumble.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like very odd games. And then my most recent memory, and you guys would some know this, is that when I did the Grab Bag 64 tournaments, and one of the years, someone pulled which game was it? I think it was it's something Destiny. I forget what it's called. It's like a black cartridge. I'm trying to remember the name off the top of my head, but I will remember it. But it's kind of like a fighting game that works on points. And we pulled it, and I didn't know what the game was, because I actually ended up at that time owning every N64 game, but I didn't know the games. So when I was like, oh, it's a multiplayer game, I'm just going to throw it in there, because again, I'm a professional apparently. And we played it, and it happened to be like the best game at that time when we did that game, and it was so much fun to watch it being played, and then no one had any idea what was going on. It was amazing. So those are my memories of my N64 times.
Like I remember when I did that grab bag tournament. I'll save it for when it's my turn. Rox.
Yeah.
So some of my favorite memories from playing the N64 were back when I was in elementary school. Like on weekends, I would just play multiplayer games with my stepnephew. Like back then, like Mario Kart 64, Diddy Kong Racing. And one of my favorites, Snowboard Kids 2.
Yeah.
And just, I mentioned like how I first played Mario Kart 60, not Mario Kart 64, Super Mario 64, like on a casino road trip. We used to take trips like that all the time when I was a kid. And the casino we went to, they had N64 stuff all the time. So I got a lot of experience with other N64 games while I was there as well. So a lot of, when I think of the N64, I mainly think of like weekends and road trips.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, weekends and road trips are always fun to have. And especially when you're able to set up a console to play it with you, like with like your friends or family that are in the car. It's always going to be a good time. Mike, what about you?
For me, when I was a kid growing up, I also used to race my parents' line Mario Kart 64, and they always would get annoyed with me doing the Rainbow Road shortcut. So yeah, back then I always had fun doing that. But honestly, more recent memories is pretty much almost every single Long Island Retro we kind of get to go to. Almost every year, it's like almost guaranteed that I end up competing in Mario Kart 64, and I almost always get top 3.
Yeah.
Just racing against all these other crazy Mario Kart 64 players, and just getting to experience like all the retro games at the convention, but a lot of N64 stuff. Honestly, Yoshils, your N64 grab bag in 2022 is still one of my highlights, because I remember making it to the final round, and then I had to facing against Doug in that freaking 6 Pokemon Stadium 2 match to end everything. That was a wild match.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
No,
Yes.
all good times. The Long Island Retro is like a phenomenal convention for the N64.
Yes.
Yes.
So I'll get to the Long Island Retro stuff in a little bit, but I do have some prior memories I want to bring up from me. So for me here, all the times that I used to play N64 multiplayer games with my brother, like mainly we would play Smash Brothers, there's Mario Kart, there was some other games that I had which were like the Pokemon Stadiums. But then we would also like pass around different games, it was my turn to play or his turn. We went to Banjo-Kazooie, and I remember we got all the way to getting to the last area before you would fight Grunty, but we never had a chance to fight Grunty because by the time that we got there, it was time for us to return the game to Blockbuster. So for years, I ended up not being able to get to Grunty and actually beat the game until I streamed the game more than 2 years ago. Right after Banjo-Kazooie was released on the Nintendo Switch Online. So that's how I managed to beat Banjo-Kazooie. I had to redeem myself because I cannot just let myself just spend so much time not going back and beating Banjo-Kazooie, so I had to do it. Additionally, I remember back in high school, we used to have club up until like when I was in 10th grade. When I was in 10th grade, they took it out. 11th grade when they took it out. But when I was in 10th grade, when I transferred to the school I went to, they had an N64. And on Fridays, like the very last period before school ended, we would play N64 games. Because there's two clubs. There's N64 Club, and then there was also the PlayStation Club. I would go to the N64 Club. We would play... there was WrestleMania 2000. They didn't have No Mercy. They had GoldenEye. They had Mario Kart 64. Which I remember there was one kid in class who was actually a pretty sick Peach player. Let's see. They had Smash Brothers. They had Diddy Kong Racing, but no one played it. Everybody just wanted to play Mario Kart. I remember people would bring their games over. People would bring Mortal Kombat 4. People bring like pretty much any game. Perfect Dark was another one. And it was fun. I used to play all these N64 games, but Smash Brothers was the big one people would play. And then at least unless someone brought a GameCube in there, people would play Melee instead. But GameCube's another story. But back to N64 memories. Another one that I could think of was like when Nintendo New York used to be the Pokemon Center, and how they would have they had Pokemon Stadium 2 at the time, and they had the cartridge stations for the Game Boy Color where you could actually get Pokemon. And I would see people playing like Pokemon Stadium 2 using their Pokemon with the transfer packs and all that stuff. Same thing. I've even seen people play Hey You Pikachu over there back in the day, just because they wanted to. But
Really?
But N64 was my introduction to Paddle the Pond, which was through Pokemon Puzzle League. It was my introduction to Star Fox because I played. Actually, no, it was not my introduction. That was Super. It was my introduction to Mario Kart because I remember I didn't play Super Mario Kart until later. But Mario Kart 64 I played first. And I remember one experience that I had before we got into N64 back in 99. My brother was admitted to the hospital because he had asthma, and he wanted to play video games because usually like they give you a video game console, and at the time the latest two were the N64 and PlayStation. And they brought in an N64 with Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. So one of the days we both played that, and then there was another day that we were playing Mario Kart 64. We were doing some of the races, and we were doing battle mode, and it was a lot of fun just playing Mario Kart 64 with each other, like me and my brother. We had a lot of fun with that. because like which it at least helped boosted his spirits back then because asthma's no joke. But but it at least like helped them like feel like better and feel like more like have well at least having higher spirits. But one other memory I want to bring up is back in 2022 at Long Island Retro. Yeah, and this does go hand in hand with the retro grab bag that you would do in the N64. And I only got to participate in one round and I lost in the first round because I do not know how to play Beetle Adventure Racing. I sucked at that game.
But that game was fun, though.
Beetle Adventure Racing is an underrated classic, along with Iggy's Wrecking Balls and Snowboard Kids too. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just sucked at it.
Did you all ever do the Pokemon Snap kiosk where you could put your game in and print out the stickers?
Yes.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
did.
I never had the opportunity. The game store that I had never had those.
Like I never got to do that in my like with my own copy because by the time I got my copy of the game, that was already gone. But I did, however, let you play the game using the kiosk they had, and that I was able to just get the stickers in general because at the time it was when it was peak Pokemania back in 1999. Like Pokemon was like just through the roof, and you couldn't really go anywhere in school at the time without hearing people talk about Pokemon. And it was just that big. And the fact that you had Pokemon Snap, just seeing Pokemon in 3D, although the first time I seen Pokemon in 3D was through Smash Brothers because Pikachu and Jigglypuff were playable. But then I remember when Pokemon Stadium released, and when Pokemon Stadium released, that was a major deal because seeing people play these games. Yep, I have the transfer pack. I have 2 transfer packs that I could just use my Game Boy games on there. I still have both games. I have Pokemon Stadium 1 and Pokemon Stadium 2. I have both. Like you have the gold in the front and you got the silver in the back. So
I never got 2.
Yeah,
I'm still looking for 2 at a decent price these days, along with some of the other games I still want to add to my collection.
As of late, every time I come across Pokemon Stadium, like out in the wild, it's always Japanese cartridges. I've never seen an American one.
So there's a reason for that. The Japanese cartridges, they're easier to get. They made more of those. And then you gotta remember, there's 2 Pokemon Stadiums also. There's one with Mewtwo in it also.
There's also the
So
Pokemon
that's
Stadium
why
Zero.
there's more of them out there. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
it.
I do.
Right.
Yeah, because Pokemon Stadium, the first Pokemon Stadium that released in Japan, like it was rushed. They rushed it just to get it out there. And their Pokemon Stadium 2 is the real beginning of Pokemon Stadium, which is the one that we ended up getting.
Right, which is the one that has Mewtwo in it because they updated the game.
It's the same game, just more content.
Right.
But what they did with the first game, they just basically used like the top Pokemon that were like the most popular in Red and Blue or Green in Japan as well, for tournaments. Like they mainly used it for tournaments, and then the second game was like what it was meant to be. And then we got the third game, which was our
Battle Revolution.
Their third game is our second game, Pokemon Stadium 2. We got Coliseum and XD and then Battle Revolution, and then they just stopped.
Because we got gold and silver.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is funny because I like my first introduction to the Stadium games was through Battle Revolution, and I didn't realize they were connected because I was wondering why are people constantly comparing this to Stadium, and then it's like I went back and looked at the gameplay, and it's like, oh, okay, so it's basically a continuation of those games, except not as fleshed out.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, like those are basically my memories of the N64. Like I pretty much had a pretty decent amount of memories. So now we're gonna get to the meat and potatoes.
All right, before we do, can I share one last that I remembered
Sure.
before? All right.
Sure.
So back when in like 90s, 2000 or early 2000s, I didn't have Banjo like from release. I went to the grocery store, to the local game store, and would buy it or like rent it every Friday. Similar to what you were saying with Banjo. When that store went out of business, because they saw that we rented both the Kazooie and Tooie like every week, they just like gave it to us at a like very discounted price because they saw how like excited we were, and I think we were one of the few people who actually just rented the game. So these are actually the 2 copies that I got from that game store, and they're still in decent condition.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
I just had to peel off the game stickers. I had to replace the label on one, and I need to still replace the label on the first one.
Yeah.
I just to kind of like hop on that also is that like, because like I do a lot of like the complete in box stuff, so I ended up getting Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 complete in box at the same time. I did it for a trade. It was at there's a place called Video Game Trading Post. I know them very well, and they're really awesome. But back then, those were a lot more accessible, so I ended up getting both of them complete in box because when I had my mother sold all of our stuff, so then when I had to rebuy everything, I got everything complete in box. I did end up, funny enough, I do happen to have Pokemon Stadium 1 and 2 also as not for resales. So the Toys R Us kiosk demos.
Ooh.
I have both of them.
Ooh.
So those are like 2 of my it's 2 like crazy things I have in my collection that I'm like, I don't know if I want to put this in my system, but it's always cool to like just to like hop on your stuff, like you got the games like for free and stuff. I think that's actually like really cool because you get like more of a memory out of that than anything. So
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah.
Is it bad that whenever I hear like N64 and Toys R Us in the same sentence, instead of thinking like, you know, the kiosk games are like the golden Toys R Us exclusive N64, I instead think of the Diddy Kong Racing tie-in action figures.
Oh, I do remember those.
I actually had 2 of them and I sold them.
The only one I ever had was the Banjo one, and I would always just forget that he had the car with him because I would just play with him on foot.
Yep. Like, I remember. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Do you think?
I was going to say, one thing I actually just remembered was seeing a lot of. There was a cross promotion between the N64 and Taco Bell in 1997. They were doing some sort of sweepstakes where you could win an N64 with Mario Kart 64, and they also like they had the toys for Mario Kart 64 at the time. I remember like they were cross promoting with Taco Bell a lot during that time, and they also did cross promotions with Fruit by the Foot. I remember there was these commercials.
I remember that too.
There was these 2 old guys, like it's like it was supposed to be 2 kids, but for some reason they're old guys just playing Banjo-Kazooie or some other games that they were playing at the time, and seeing those commercials as well as the famous Got Milk commercial where these 2 kids were playing
Mario 64.
Mario
That's still
64.
one of my favorite. That's still one of my favorite commercials.
Yep.
And well, the thing about the Fruit by the Foot, it had like not like necessarily cheats, but like guides on how to do things in game on the wrapper. So like buying Fruit by the Foot and being like, okay, now I'm going to go play my Nintendo 64 and see if this works. That was a big deal.
It was a big deal. Yeah. Like, I remember that commercial vividly. Like, I still think about that, like, every now and then. Like, when I think about the best Got Milk commercials, it's definitely up there for me. But yeah, I want to point one thing out before we move on to the next thing. When you look at the Pokemon Stadium cartridges, one thing I never liked about it, they have this little white bar that says in here, this game pack belongs to.
So you can write your name on it.
Oh yeah.
I think this is the only N64 game that actually does that. Like,
Nope, that's not true.
Oh no.
Nope, Animal Crossing does too.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
Damn.
So the reason why they did that is because those are like games that like they said like for some reason like they heard that kids were stealing the video games. So they did that for the games so that people put their names on it so they know it's there.
Well, also in Pokemon Stadium specifically, you can store your Game Boy Pokemon on the cartridge.
Yeah.
So if you lose the cartridge, you lose your Pokemon.
True.
Right.
It is true, yeah, because the game saves were mostly on the cartridge, but there were some N64 games in which you need to get a memory pack in order to save.
Yep.
Which shout outs to WinBack not being able to save in the cartridge, which results in when you play it on the Switch Online, the only way to save is through save states.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's dumb.
It's dumb,
Yeah,
but
I remember that.
yep. So the next thing, and Yoshils, we're going to start with you on this one. What are your top 5 N64 games?
Jeez. All right. So my number 1 favorite Nintendo 64 game of all time is Paper Mario. Paper Mario
That's a good
is
choice.
Yep.
it's a solid RPG, and it's one of the first RPGs I ever played in my life.
Mm-hmm.
It is the first RPG I ever beaten. It had Mario in it. I love the partners in it. Every single partner has a great personality. The boss battles are really fun. Exploring the world in a very different light, which everything is paper. The theming is amazing. And then the story isn't even too bad either. And I think it's also one of the best Bowsers at that time because he was very joking. And the only other Bowser we ever really got that was like that was in Super Mario RPG, which also is a very solid game.
Yep.
So that's why I feel like Paper Mario is my number 1. Number 2 would be Banjo-Kazooie. I've beaten that game 100% anytime I've ever played it. It's a really fun game. It's short, which is sweet. It doesn't last too long. The story is very simple. The gameplay is really fun. The collectibles are actually worth collecting. Donkey Kong 64. And then on top of all that, like it's 2 of one of my favorite characters, which is Banjo-Kazooie. So that's my second favorite.
Yep.
My third favorite game. See, this is where it gets hard. So I think my third favorite game is definitely No Mercy, which is WWF No Mercy.
Yeah.
Very solid wrestling game made by Aki. The character selection is incredible. The gameplay is really fun. I love that they do the entrances. I love the music in the game. And then you also have a selection of items to like beat each other up in that even nowadays you don't get that much stuff, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah.
Because like even like the backstage brawl stuff that you could do in the new games is like nothing compared to what you could do now. I mean, in the older games, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The stuff that you could do now in the newer games is still doesn't compare to the older games, I should say. Excuse me.
Yep.
So I think that game is a number 3. Number 4, this is where it gets even more harder, is Final Fantasy 7? No, I'm kidding. That's a good joke, though. You liked that one. That was good.
That was
real good.
My 4th favorite is Yoshi's Story. I've beaten that game. I've beaten it 100%. It's a hard game to 100%, but it's really, really fun. Like, you could beat that game in an hour, and then if you want to get everything, that's when it takes longer. So you could play it 100%, or you could play it once, and then be like, cool, I beat the game.
Yeah, but it's kind of... The only thing I found annoying about Yoshi's Story was trying to get the 3 hearts to unlock all the levels, but I agree, that's a phenomenal game, though, otherwise, still.
Yeah, and then on top of that, then you can get the black Yoshi and the white Yoshi, and they're like secret Yoshis in it, too. They might be a little bit biased, but I mean, hey, listen, you're talking to a Yoshi. And then my 5th favorite is actually Pokemon Snap. Very chilled game, really fun. It's actually one of the first Pokemon games I ever played because I never played what's it called? A mainline Pokemon game like Red, Blue, Yellow, any of those. I haven't played any of them until like 2 years ago, which was Pokemon Leaf Green. That was the first time I ever played a mainline game. So, funny enough, N64 was my entry of getting into Pokemon, and Pokemon Snap was the first game I ever played, and I fell in love with like the characters and stuff, and that got me into the cartoon and everything like that. So, Pokemon Snap is a chilled game. It's fun. It's like I said, it's a shorter game. And then like you get like more of like reactions of how the Pokemon react
Yep.
Other than just being like, oh, attack this or attack that. Like you actually get like how they kind of react to certain things where like Zapdos is like, oh, he's angry, or Pikachu is cute, or Electro just looks goofy until he explodes or something like that. So it's like I like it has a lot of personality in it. So that's why I like that game. And then I think if I had a second fifth or like a between fifth and sixth game would be Conker's Bad Fur Day. That game is amazing. It is rated M, so it's not for kids, but I played it when I was a kid. And my grandmother was watching us play the game, and she goes, "Isn't this like a terrible game to play?" And me and my brother were like, "No." And then all of a sudden, Conker started pissing. So,
Oh my god. Oh man.
Oh, boy.
but I feel like that game is incredible too. From what it could have been to what it actually ended up being, because they were pissed off about the whole Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie thing. I think that's great.
Yeah.
So it's a fun story about that too. If you guys don't know about that, you should look into that.
I
should.
definitely will after hearing that. That sounds hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, you never heard of that? The Stop and Swoop?
Oh, well, I mean, Stop and Swap, yeah, I've heard of all that, but...
Okay, so what happened is what they wanted to originally do is that with the Banjo-Kazooie cartridge, let's just say that they had eggs in the game, which they actually still do if you go into the code in the game. And you can actually do it in there's like kind of like a sand castle thing. If you put in certain codes, it actually shows the Stop and Swoop items in game, and you could actually collect them. Now, what you were supposed to do is that in the ice game too, I mean the ice key.
Yeah.
So what happened is after you collected all that, then what you would do is that you would set it up. There would be a Stop and Swoop room. You would go in there. You would say like, "Oh, I'm going to switch the game." So then they would be like, "All right." So you leave the system on. Take out the Banjo-Kazooie card, put in the Banjo-Tooie card, and all the Stop and Swoop items would transfer to the Banjo-Tooie game. The problem is that Nintendo said that was going to mess the code up on the system itself and could brick it. And they told them not to do that. So even though the code's in the game and you could actually physically do it, you can't do it. Which is why in Tooie, there's like a chicken that says something about the Stop and Swoop items. So they were mad. They were mad about it, Rare. So what they did is that they took Conker's the Tales, which is the game that they were supposed to make, and they changed the entire game and made Conker's Bad Fur Day. That's why the game came out the way it did.
Really?
That is one of the best happy things to happen out of that. That is great.
That is, yes.
It's crazy. That story is insane. And they got
fun
away
fact
with
about
it.
the hardware for originally it was like you had 5 seconds between taking one to put to the other. The hardware actually changed on the 64 between Kazooie and Tooie, that it was like less than a second to swap it. So that's why it would cause damage to the cartridges.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
100%. That's what happened.
Huh.
If you ever want to know anything Banjo-Kazooie or Banjo-Tooie related, I could rant about it for hours. I'm not going to.
Yeah. Banjo-Kazooie thing we gotta do now.
In the
Do a whole
future.
talk about it.
In the future. In the future. Yep. So, but yeah, those were some pretty good picks for your top 5.
Thank you.
Rox, your turn.
So my number 1 pick is Super Mario 64. First game I ever played. That game will always have a special place in my heart.
Yep.
Number 2 is, and I was debating between these two games. It's Kazooie. It was either that or it was going to be Tooie, but I think I prefer Kazooie. Number 3 is Star Fox 64.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4 is Diddy Kong Racing, and then my number 5 pick is my number 5 pick is probably gonna be either Duck Dodgers 64 or Mario Kart 64.
All right.
Really?
Also a little PSA. I was originally going to joke and say Blues Brothers 64. Don't ever play that game. That game is bad. I made a mistake when I was a kid, and I traded my cousin my copy of Yoshi's Story for Blues Brothers 64. That was a mistake.
All right, I gotta go. I'll see you later.
Anyway, yeah, I'm sorry about that though. What about you, Mike?
All right, well, you're gonna see an easy theme with me because, yeah, with the N64, my favorite game, of course, of all time is Mario Kart 64. It's the reason why I got into video games in the first place. It got me into racing games in general, and since then I've always been hooked on kart racers. So, yeah, number 2 would be Diddy Kong Racing because I love the adventure mode, and I love doing all the time trials to unlock TT, and I had a good time challenging myself with that game.
Mm-hmm.
Number 3, I feel like it's very underrated. Not a lot of people appreciated this one as a kart racing game, but it was also made by Rareware. That would be Mickey Speedway USA.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Yo, Mickey Speedway USA is like the most underrated, most challenging kart racer on the N64.
I'd argue, like, as hard as Diddy Kong Racing is, I'd argue Mickey Speedway USA is actually a bit harder.
Oh no, I 100% feel that because especially the last 4 tracks, like Oregon and Colorado specifically,
Yep.
like you have that tiny bridge to have to drift across, especially when you're playing as like the unlockable characters like Dewey and Ludwig von Drake. Like, forget about it; it's a mess.
Did you ever unlock Huey?
I unlocked all. Well, wait, which one was the one you had to get on the Game Boy cartridge?
That one.
I ended up unlocking them, but I always found that Dewey was the fastest for me personally.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can't believe that was mentioned today.
Oh no, I love Mickey Speedway USA. I actually did one speedrun of that game also. I probably should do more of those in the future too. But
Agreed.
Oh my goodness.
number 4 for me would have to be Snowboard Kids 2.
Oh my god.
No, because Snowboard Kids
Yes.
2. Snowboard Kids 2, I rented that one a lot from Blockbuster, and I remember just enjoying the concept of like just having a kart racer, but you're snowboarding like through a castle and in space, and there was a lot of fun, unique ideas for Snowboard Kids 2 that I always found very interesting.
Favorite level in the game is still Wendy's house.
Wendy's house is the best music.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, even though it's like a play on Silver Mountains music, I love what they did with the Wendy's house rendition for that. And then number 5 for me is actually not a kart racer, but that would have to be Pokemon Puzzle League.
Yes.
No, because Pokemon Puzzle League, you can ask our friend Rob at Switch and Play. He loves his Panel de Pon games, and I remember like getting good with that particular game and learning how to like play through Panel de Pon and how I got better at that game. And honestly, that was just a good time waster also. But honorable mentions go to Mario Party 1 through 3, and then Super Smash Bros. Also is honorable mentions for me.
And those are some excellent choices that you have for N64.
Don't forget, Pokemon Puzzle League also had like instrumental versions of the To Be a Master.
Oh no, 100%.
Yep.
Most of the Pikachu's jukebox music was instrumental in that game. That's why I love it.
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Wasn't Puzzle League the only Pokemon game to be based on the anime? Or
Yes.
Yes.
It actually was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
It's
No,
like,
when you're hot, you're hot.
there was a
Right.
game. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I have to say, like, the first 2 were like obvious, but then you went banger after banger after banger. I'm like, yes, yes. And it's like, I love it because Pokemon Puzzle League, it's one of those things where I'm like, no one ever mentions it, but like, I've had it in my grab bag 64, and every time it pops up, it's one of the coolest things because people go crazy for it.
Yep.
And then on top of that, I like Lieutenant Surge in the game because, you know, he's my favorite character from the anime. So every time he picks Jolteon, which I don't know why.
Oh yeah, the Pokemon sounds in that game are top tier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the way that he says Jolteon is hilarious because he doesn't even say the whole name. He goes, Jolt! Jolt! And I'm like, yes!
If we're going into Pokemon Puzzle League sounds, Persian kills me every time still.
The only thing I wish he said, he would go, Raichu, give him another body slam. That'd be amazing.
Yep.
But yes, I'm sorry, please.
Yeah.
No, you're good.
Yeah, you were going to say something else, Rox?
Wait, no, actually, I kind of regret not choosing Snowboard Kids 2 for my number 5 because that's a really good one.
No, it's all right. That's why we're all
It's
here.
all
We
right.
all have our own things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all right. It's all right.
Snowboard Kids 2 is a game I should also probably attempt to speedrun at some point. I would like to give that a shot.
Dude, people would watch that. People would watch that.
Absolutely, like absolutely, yeah.
One of the top Diddy Kong Racing speedrunners does run Snowboard Kids too, and it does attract an audience. I can definitely vouch for that. Yeah.
All right.
Yep. What about you, Andy? Your top 5?
Okay, I'm gonna go in reverse order where you're for number 1 first. I'm gonna go with the number 5, which is actually a tie. I couldn't decide, so my top 5 or number 5 is either Mario 64 or Smash Bros. They're very different. Mario is more nostalgic, but I played a lot more of Smash Bros. So I have those two are like my tied for 5. Top 10 might have been easier, but I'm gonna go with the 5.
Yeah.
Number 4, Mario Party. I played the crap out of this game. The first one specifically. I used to have the blisters to prove it.
I still have 2 of them on my left hand.
Yeah. It was mostly in the palm right here.
Now, for me, it's like right up here on the top and the middle. I have 2 little dots still that are like left over.
Nice. All right. Number 3, Star Fox 64.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's classic. You can replay it over and over and over and over again. And then, you unlock hard mode, and then you unlock being able to play the people with like guns over their shoulders.
Yep.
That was fun. I enjoyed it. Number 2, Diddy Kong Racing. Fun fact, I speedrun it, which means I have also a Japanese copy.
Oh, damn.
Nice.
So I have it twice because I just really like the game.
Yep.
But it's not my number 1.
I don't got mine on my hand, but offhand, I also got a Japanese copy of Mario Kart 64.
Nice. And then if you haven't picked up on it already, my number 1, Banjo-Kazooie.
Yep.
Even got the cartridge signed by Grant Kirkhope. Need to replace the label.
Damn.
Yep.
Damn.
Yeah, how'd you get done by Grant Kirkhope? That must be a fun story.
It is actually a hilarious story, and I don't know if I've ever shared this on stream before, so this is a fun. So I was at the Ohio Game Dev Expo in 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. Grant Kirkhope was there, Super Guitar Brothers. I had made network contact with Sean Beeson. So Sean Beeson did the soundtrack to the 3DS version of Castle of Illusion.
Ooh.
So he's kind of composer, does video game music. He also does a lot of like instrumental piano. Anyway, if you didn't know this, Grant Kirkhope did the music for the remake of Castle of Illusion that came out in like 2013.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. So I saw Sean there. I was chatting with him, just kind of talking because he's local to Ohio. And we're standing out there out in the hallway, and I'm like, well, that's great. And have you seen Grant? I haven't seen him all day. I had to do some volunteer work earlier. I've been roaming around, haven't seen him. And he's like, yeah, I'm just waiting on him. We're going to head to this after party, blah, 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 blah. And so I'm just standing there talking, and I look over. Here comes out of the bathroom Grant Kirkhope. And I'm like, the words stop. And so I just introduced myself. It's great to meet you. Would you mind signing both of my copies of Kazooie and Tooie? And he did. I hope he washed his hands.
Yep.
I didn't ask. I didn't want to know the answer.
That's perfectly fine.
Listen, you got the autographs. That's the main thing.
That's what
That's
matters. Yep. That's what matters in the end.
Oh, I forgot. I was going to joke my number 1 being Superman 64, but I already gave my number 1.
Yep.
Now,
nice.
the question is, do you use your Banjo-Tooie and Banjo-Kazooie that's signed and put it into your system?
I have before, but because I play Banjo on Switch Online and on Xbox Live Arcade, I have no need for them. So now they are in these containers that one of my mods graciously bought for me.
Thank God.
Nice.
That's where they should stay, right? Nice and pristine condition.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, also, I will just say this too. Like, for people that don't know, because I think the Final Fantasy VII thing was a little weird to say, but there's a reason why I said it. Final Fantasy VII was actually supposed to be on the N64.
Yes.
And apparently, since the N64 was not optimized enough, they switched it to PlayStation. That's why the last Final Fantasy game was 6 on the Super Nintendo, and then they switched 7 to PlayStation.
That's
Because PlayStation
crazy.
was disc based. So that's actually a real story too.
There was a tech. Go ahead.
No, you can imagine the alternate timeline where we have 4 cartridges of Final Fantasy VII on the N64.
Which ironically,
We're doing that right now. We don't have 3 yet.
It'd be a cartridge with a CD because we'd be on the 64DD.
yep.
That is true.
It's true.
That is true.
And we're gonna get to 64DD when we get to the community questions. But I will say this: for Final Fantasy VII, like there was actually a tech demo of Final Fantasy, but it had the Final Fantasy VI characters against like I don't remember what boss it was, but they just played music from Final Fantasy VI from the Super Nintendo, just because whatever music they originally have for the tech demo does not exist. But the tech demo, it was to showcase how Final Fantasy will look in 3D. But lo and behold, they would not go to S64; they would go to PlayStation. But that's one of the biggest what ifs right there.
That's crazy, right?
Yes.
It is wild to think about.
So funny how like I'm actually going to do reverse on it, but funny how you decided to do a tie. I actually also plan to do a tie, and I share one of those same games. Smash
You
Brothers.
couldn't do 5.
Smash Brothers is one of the games I have as a tie. The other is WWF No Mercy, actually, because one of the best wrestling games on the platform, and this is one of the best multiplayer games on the platform. Like, honestly, like they're both very good games. I just had trouble figuring out which one do I like more. Like, because one would be what the actual 5th, and the other would be 6th place, but they're both really good.
Man, from what I've heard, even to this day, No Mercy is just considered to be one of the best wrestling games of all time. Like, only possibly falling behind SmackDown versus Raw.
Yeah. And a couple of other wrestling games on PS2, but yeah.
I think it's just a style clash. It depends on what you like more, because the Aki system is more arcadey, while the SmackDown versus Raw is more like home based. So it depends on what you like. So I feel like it depends on the person.
Yeah. So
Makes sense.
number 4 for me is Banjo-Kazooie. This game, after playing it and finally beating it 2 years ago on the Switch Online, like I absolutely love this game. This is probably like I actually like this game a lot more than Super Mario 64, which I know a lot of people will agree or disagree with me, but I'm
in the camp that agrees with that, actually.
Yes. Like this is a fantastic game. Absolutely. Yeah. Like number 3 for me is, and this is a game that only like I know for a fact that I'm going to be mentioning this, and it's a personal bias, but I really do like Mega Man 64 a whole lot. This is a really fantastic game. Of course,
you Legends player.
Of course, it's better on PlayStation, but N64, like the advantage it has is that you actually get to use the analog stick on N64, because the PS1 version you could not use the DualShock sticks because in Japan it came out before the DualShock was actually released. Over here it came out after, but they didn't optimize it for it. But the sequel had it though. But N64, this was actually a really good port. Granted, they compressed everything to make sure it fits, because they did the same thing with Resident Evil 2 on the N64. They compressed 2 discs worth of that game from PS1 onto a single cartridge. The fact that they actually did that was impressive. This game, they did the same thing.
I'm actually glad they didn't, like, outside of compressing stuff, they didn't really remove anything to make it work on the N64. I'm kind of impressed by that.
It was basically 1-to-1. They managed to make it work. Number 2, and I actually don't have this cartridge yet because of how expensive it is, but it's Paper Mario. Paper Mario.
Yeah, I remember you and me were looking for that at Long Island Retro. I think we both saw it for like $85 at Long Island Retro last year. That just passed.
Yeah, like I did not want to spend that much on it. I was expecting to spend like maybe like 50, maybe 60 on it. Yeah, I see Paper Mario right there. You have it, Andy?
I do.
Like
I also have the box.
Nice. I have mine complete in box, and I have the player's guide, so I'm sorry.
I played Paper Mario through the Nintendo Switch Online. At first, the first time I played the game was actually on Wii's Virtual Console, but never finished it. Then I played it on the Switch Online, and I finished it there. And this was right around the time, like this was months after Nintendo patched the game, because when it released on Switch Online, there was a bug that needed to be fixed, where if you facing off against General Guy and you die and it is a game over, then the app crashes, and then if you saved whatever progress you've made, you instantly go back to whatever was the last manual save you made, unless you made a save state, which they had since fixed that patch, because that was one of the worst things I have seen.
I love General Guy's boss fight too in that game.
Yeah, because the thing is that that issue never persisted in any other version of the game. For whatever reason, it did on Switch Online up until when they patched it. I believe the same issue happened for a later boss. I think it was the Piranha Plant boss. The same thing happened, where if you died and game overed, that the app just crashed. It was a bug. And yes, as Dragon pointed out in the chat, in a later world, where if you hit a tree with your hammer and all of a sudden the game crashed, they did fix that. That was only on the Switch Online.
That's crazy. I didn't even know any of that.
64 games.
Yes.
I had no idea about any of that either, to be honest.
I did.
Yep. But that being,
I did hear something about a crash. I just didn't know what. Yeah.
Yeah, those were the crashes that were on the Switch Online version that had since been patched, and then people tested it out just to see if it still persisted, and it didn't. Like, the first thing people tried out was the hammer, and again, no crash. The crash was gone. But back to the game itself. I really like the story. I like the partner characters. And I thought it was a lot of fun. The funny thing is, it was actually my second Paper Mario game that I've beaten. The first one was actually Origami King, but then I went back to playing this one because I've been wanting to finish this one for years. And I finally did. Because, again, I started on the Virtual Console, but just for whatever reason, never went back to it after, I want to say it was chapter 4 that I left off there, and I just started over in the Switch, and I'm like, here we go. Did it. I loved it. It's now my second favorite game on the N64. But my number one favorite N64 game, and I'm actually shocked that I'm the only one that is actually bringing this particular game up. This game, to me, is one of the all-time greatest games, not only on the N64, but of all time. I remember seeing screenshots, trailers, and then I remember finally playing this game. And I've also played the remake of this game too, and I love it even more. But this version is absolutely amazing. And this game is The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time.
That's exactly what I thought you were going to say. Either that or Majora's Mask.
I have not played Majora's Mask.
Fantastic games.
As of this recording, I have not played Majora's Mask, but Ocarina of Time is one of the greatest games ever made. Like, I remember when this was being hyped up, like, Nintendo was pretty much hyping this game up as, like, their big deal. Like, how PlayStation was hyping up Final Fantasy VII, Metal Gear Solid, Resident Evil 2, and all that. N64 was hyping this game up, and it ended up winning Game of the Year that year in, like, multiple, like, publications. This game was just, like, incredible. Like, you start off, like, as a kid Link, and then you go around fighting different dungeons, and then all of a sudden you go to the Temple of Time, and then you turn into adult Link. That was surreal. Like, being able to transform from a kid to being an adult, like, 7 years in the future after you, like, place the Master Sword into, or pick up the Master Sword in, like, depending on if you're kid or adult, and being able to go all the way to, like, a very different Hyrule where pretty much Ganondorf kind of just took things over. It was amazing. This game was amazing. Of course, I will say I absolutely love the 3DS version more, like the remake, but the original N64 game was still holds up very well. Still a pretty good game.
It is still part of my my Triforce of Zelda games.
So this one I would say is like if I have to say what my favorite N64 game is, it's this one, Ocarina of Time. I wish I had the gold cartridge, but I'll settle for just having the standard one.
So there is a ROM hack of Banjo-Kazooie that they created called the Jiggies of Time.
Yes.
Oh, I
where
heard
they
about
take-
that.
It is very good. If you ever get the chance, definitely play it.
I will definitely try it out sometime. I remember watching a good buddy of mine, Shad. He was playing it, and it actually looked incredible.
Oh yeah, I played it all on stream a few years ago, and I would probably play it again.
Yep.
I never actually played Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, so I feel like that's something I need to do at one point.
I'm kind of in the same boat. I don't really play Zelda games too much, but at some point I should probably give them a shot.
Yeah.
I do gotta ask though, because I'm curious. Like every time I see a ROM hack of Ocarina of Time, it's always horror themed for some reason, and I have no idea why that is.
There are
Is
some.
that
Go ahead.
that's the kid thing. I forget what it's called. The thing that it haunts your cartridge or whatever. I forget what his name is.
Oh, you're talking,
Oh.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there's some spooky vibes in some parts of the game. But yeah, so before we do the community questions, I want to ask everybody. I'll start with you, Rox, on this one. How much did the N64 shape your taste in video games?
I want to say honestly a lot, because like I said, like I've mainly been playing like platformers on the N64,
Mm-hmm.
and that kind of just carried into like my love for video, like my favorite genre of games now, where it's like platformers and games that are platformer adjacent.
Yes.
Especially because this arguably is a genre that started on the N64, especially collectathons. I love collectathons.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because collectathons had a huge prominence on the N64.
Yeah.
What about you, Mike?
For me, it definitely pretty much got me, like I said, it got me into gaming in general, and pretty much, at least for me, like, ever since playing Mario Kart 64 and Diddy Kong Racing, I've just been a huge fan of kart racing games in general.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it pretty much made me a fan of kart racing games. It pretty much made me want to get good at a lot of kart racing games.
All right.
So, yeah, very much so.
What about you, Andy?
All right. Well, you've already known Banjo-Kazooie is basically my whole personality. So having that, also, I'm just looking. I have all of these are all the rare games that came out on 64. So I've followed them all the way through. It's kind of been my thing, is being the rare guy.
Mm-hmm.
Also moved on to Platonic when they did their thing. Also, 3D platformer guy. Big fan of Glover. Didn't mention that earlier, but
Is Love actually a good game?
I love it. It can be frustrating, but it is a good game.
Alright, because eventually I am going to tackle Glover whenever I decide to do my N64 alphabet challenge. That's a spoiler alert. When I get to letter G, that's what I'm going with.
Yep.
It's also getting remade on Switch and all the modern consoles, so just throwing that out there.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I would say it has greatly affected all the games that I enjoy, and I mean, became a Nintendo freak pretty much even after I got my Xbox. Funny story, I asked for a GameCube for Christmas, got an Xbox. And even though I had the Xbox, I would play my Nintendo 64 a lot more up until I got my 3DS and Switch.
Yeah.
So,
All right. Very nice. What about you, Yoshils?
So, it actually changed my taste in video games in two different ways. Like I was saying before, where me and my friends were playing so many random games, it opened me up to playing everything instead of reading reviews. Because the N64, as small as the library is, even though 297 games is a lot of games, but compared to a lot of other systems at the time, it's very much smaller than everything else. But because I was collecting every single game, me and my friends would play all the games. So it opened me up to RPGs. It opened me up to racing games. It opened me up to shooters. It opened me up to a lot of different genres, even like fighting games, because of like Fighter's Destiny and Super Smash Brothers, and even like Body Harvest, as stupid as that game is, or I forget what it's called. It's Body Harvest or God Wars or something. I forget the game. But like we played that and we were like, wow, this game is ass. But it got me into fighting games because then I played Marvel vs. Capcom and everything.
Yeah.
So N64, and it's kind of going in a little bit of a tangent, the question, but is my favorite console of all time. But because of that, and because I collected everything, it just got me into everything else. So I'm one of those people that like, I prefer to play the game on my own, and then if I don't like the game, then I could always sell it or return it. But if I really like the game, I'm going to keep it. So that's how I got into series like Kingdom Hearts. I got into series like Final Fantasy. How I got into Yakuza. How I got into just Epic Mickey. Banjo-Kazooie. Conker's Bad Fur Day. I would have never played that if it wasn't an N64 game. Even like some racing games like Rush and Cruising USA, I would have never gotten to those.
Yep.
So it opened me up in a very big way where I was into everything. Then on top of that, it also changed the way I look at the video games as a collector. I was like, there's so much variant of games and there's so little of them. I decided to collect every single game, and then in 2017, 2018, I actually did end up having every single game of the system. And after that, that's when I started branching out because I went into certain things. And in a collector's sense, it let me be like, I actually enjoy collecting what I want instead of trying to collect because it's worth a lot or collecting because it's just like, oh, collect everything for this one thing. I don't do that. I actually collect what I want. And even now, as I get older and I'm starting to let go of some of the stuff because you never know, one day I might move out of my place where I'm at, or maybe I just want to make some room for other things. It makes me more open to, even though I'm selling a lot of stuff, to be open to other things like Pokemon cards or figures or whatever. So it actually, N64 started a lot for me, like a lot. So that and Dreamcast. So
Yep.
that 96 to 2000 was a big eye opener for me for a lot of stuff when it came to like nerdy stuff.
Oh yeah.
I
Absolutely.
remember whenever I go retro hunting, even though I have like, PS2, Dreamcast, other consoles, the two that I always look for the most are N64 and GameCube games.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
Yeah, it's big.
it really is. Like, so it definitely helped me like with, so the N64 definitely helped me with how I would perceive like different video games, especially from Nintendo's games of that particular era, where when they made the jump from 2D to 3D, like I've already said it about Sega with Sonic. I've already said it with PlayStation and how they handle things. And then over here with Nintendo, like how Mario jumped from 2D to 3D, just seeing like all the changes they had made with how Mario 64 worked. Not to mention the fact that seeing like all these different series, like seeing Mario Party, seeing Smash Brothers, not to mention Banjo-Kazooie started here. And I remember seeing like different, whenever I would see promotional material with Nintendo, like you would see the usual suspects. You see Mario, see Link, Pikachu, because they were pushing Pokemon at the time. But Banjo-Kazooie would also be on there. Like they actually treated Banjo-Kazooie in the same upper echelon as like Mario or Zelda or even Pokemon around that time. Like that's how much they actually valued Banjo out of like pretty much everything, even more so than Donkey Kong. But
Yeah.
if I have to say anything about like one thing I wish the N64 had, I wish the N64 had a Metroid game. It did not have a Metroid 64.
I'm surprised it didn't actually.
I do want to at least get to that after I finish my thought here, because I do have something I want to say. But I will say though that the N64 just it helped broaden my horizons, just like every other platform, like on the type of games that I would play, but also the familiarity of Nintendo's games and just coming back to the world of how Nintendo is, but in 3D was phenomenal. So, regarding Metroid 64, so there was an interview with Sakamoto, since he's the series director of the Metroid series. He mentioned that he just couldn't come up with any ideas on how to make a Metroid 64 work, and as a result, they decided not to do it. They did, however, contacted a third party developer or second party developer to work on the game, and they rejected it because they felt that they would not do Metroid justice, considering the fact that the last game was Super Metroid, and they felt like they could not live up to those expectations. And Sakamoto was asked what studio it was, and he refused to comment on that. He said, "I can't comment on that." But a lot of people speculate on who it is. I personally think that the studio they wanted to get to make Metroid on N64, I think they wanted Rare to do it.
Really?
But Kev Bayless has actually gone out and said that it wasn't them. They weren't approached for that.
Oh, they weren't? Oh.
No.
I do wonder who they would have had work on Metro 64, because that's another big what if right there. Like,
well, I'm just
thinking. Go ahead.
I was just thinking all of the major Nintendo franchises. So you have Mario 64, Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time. You have Star Fox. You have Kirby.
Yep.
The ones that you're missing, what are Metroid, Mother, or Earthbound, I guess.
Well, that almost happened.
Almost.
Yeah.
Same thing with Metroid 64, right?
And Fire Emblem was another one. Though granted, we didn't get Fire Emblem in the United States yet, but there was a Fire Emblem 64 plan, but it got canceled because they didn't like what they were working on, and also the original series director for Fire Emblem left Nintendo. He ended up making his own game for the PlayStation, which was originally known as Emblem Saga, but it changed the name to Tearing Saga because he ended up getting into a lawsuit with Nintendo, which he ended up winning because basically they have a thing in Japan in which that you can't actually like a spiritual successor to a series that is like an inspiration. Like, you can't pretty much stop that. I think there was another lawsuit from a different company that tried to do that, and they failed. But they had to change the name. But Nintendo did request them to change the name from Emblem Saga to another name, which ended up being Tearing Saga. But it came out very late in the PlayStation life cycle, and it ended up not selling well anyway. But that's pretty much how it was. But yeah, there was a Fire Emblem 64 plan, and some of the ideas went to other games like the Fire Emblem games on Game Boy Advance, and also Path of Radiance on GameCube. So all is not lost.
You mentioned Earthbound 64 earlier, and I just want to add on top of that.
Yeah,
that is, to me personally, it's one of the most interesting canceled games of all time.
Yes.
To me personally, that's what got me into the whole looking. That's what made me interested in looking up cut content and scrap games. Is Earthbound 64.
Oh yeah. Let's do the community questions right now. So, this one was from Gray54. Which N64 games were harder for you to find later in life when you started collecting them? Paper Mario.
Iggy's Wrecking Balls, I'm still having a hard time finding.
Believe it or not, Super Mario 64. Though I think that's mainly just because the retro stores around me just rarely get copies in.
Yep.
I don't know if. Oh wait, the one that I struggled to find for the longest time was GoldenEye, and then recently I got Space Station Silicon Valley.
Ooh.
Which was one that was recommended to me, and it was hard to find, but I eventually found it. eBay.
Yep.
From what I've heard, Space Station Silicon Valley is another one of those hidden gems.
Yep.
Mhm.
I guess I could comment on this in a little bit of a different way because even though I've ended up getting everything, back at that time around 2015 when everything was still a little bit cheaper at the time, before you know what, so though the hardest games to find during those times was the games that were never talked about. So for me, games that were hard to find were actually like things like Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2
Yeah.
or like Rush 2099. Like the games that some people just didn't talk about at all. So when you try to look for them in the stores, they'll never show up.
Like
And
Blues
people
Brothers
weren't
64,
really-
right?
But I'm sorry?
Like Blues Brothers 64.
Actually, yes. But I did end up getting that complete in box, don't ask. But but it was like it was kind of this thing where like because now everything's a different market, a lot of the rare games you can find more easily now because even though they may have a bigger price check on them now, they are easier to find. So when you define that question, I feel like it's more so like what's harder to find. So now it's going to be games that no one talks about again. And then when you go to a game store, you're not going to see Fighter's Destiny. You're not going to see Iggy's Spaceballs. You're not going to see Buck Bumble. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's going to be those type of games are going to be the harder ones to find now because, yes, they're not great games by far compared to like Legend of Zeldas and Mario's or whatever, but it's the games that people don't trade in because people never really own those games.
Yeah.
So those are the harder games that are going to be hard to find if you're trying to do a full collection. Do I say for you to do that nowadays? No, it's not feasible anymore. But
No.
if you're looking for games that are for yourself, that's a different story. Like Paper Mario, you could find it. Maybe not for the price that you're looking for, but you can find it. You know what I'm saying? Like $85 is a lot for a game like that. I do agree. It should be a $60 game because that's what it originally was too.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like I don't understand. Like I get it's a really good game. It's my top one, but I don't expect people to pay $60 for a game like that. That's like impossible. Now,
Yeah.
if you're talking about Super Bowling, which is a Blockbuster exclusive game, now you talk about something different. The company doesn't exist anymore. It's a harder game to find. They never actually made copies to sell. It was always rentals. Then you start getting the tricky stuff.
Yes.
So, that would be the answer. It's a very broad answer, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's just when you want to find something you want, like on the like I'm not really finding copies of Chameleon Twist 1 or 2 that much.
I got really lucky getting Chameleon Twist 1 at like LA Retro like 2 years ago. And I'm kicking myself that I didn't pick up both at the same time because when I went back to go find 2 at LA Retro in 2022 or 2023, someone else already grabbed it.
Yeah.
Right.
So now I'm like trying to get Chameleon Twist 2 still.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like a game I mentioned earlier that I feel falls under this. I know I said Super Mario 64, but that's more of a like just because of the area I live in, not so much that it's actually hard to find.
Yeah.
A game that actually is difficult to find though that I got lucky and I just so happened to find on my birthday, Duck Dodgers 64.
Yeah.
Again, it's like you said, Chameleon Twist 1 and 2, games that I want to talk about. Duck Dodgers, games that aren't being talked about. It's that type of market right now. That's just
Yeah.
how it is.
Yep. All right. Next question is from Shad. What N64 game do you think is not nearly as bad as its reputation? And I know he's asking this because more likely, if he was on here, his answer would have been Donkey Kong 64. Which
That was actually going to be my answer, so I agree.
I mean, I don't really have a good answer for that because there's not a lot of bad N64 games I've played.
let's see if I had to think of any games that people say are not as like bad as like their reputation makes it out to be. Like I feel like, yeah, I know like people talk about how Super Mario 64 was the first game in its series, and people talk about how like, oh, it's overrated. Like they talk about how like that every other game that released after is better, and I'm like, that may be true, and it absolutely could be, but I think Super Mario 64 is still like top notch for what it is.
I mean, my answer too. Then, if we're going into that kind of territory,
Yeah.
I mean, I might get some kickback from this, but honestly, I enjoy playing Superman 64. So
I never played it, so I wouldn't be able to give a proper answer like how bad it is.
Yeah, I did not have a good experience with Superman 64.
I got through the rings. I'm good.
It's ridiculous.
It
But
really
it's not
is.
as bad as everybody says it is.
So I actually got up to the part with the tornadoes, and that's where I was like very confused on what to do.
I like throwing the cars, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know if this would count because this one's kind of divisive. Banjo Tooie, because I know some people think it's not a good game just because of how, you know, similar to the DK64 issue of it being bloated, and it's I don't see bloat. So I don't think bloated is the same as it being bad, you know.
Yeah.
A lot of the complaints with Tui is that there's so much backtracking where the first game you didn't have that. And so it was very different, where it's not necessarily bad, but a lot of the audience doesn't like that. They don't like it different. Just look at Nuts and Bolts. It's not a bad game.
So
It really is.
64.
I'll make my comment on that because I am a Banjo-Kazooie stand, and Tui I've never enjoyed, but my reason being is because, yes, the first thing is the backtracking. Second of all, it doesn't really tell you. It's not that it has to tell you, like, you could explore stuff, but, like, a little bit of guidance would help in certain situations, and they give you no guidance on what to do on anything. So I've always every time I've ever played the game, I've always been confused on how to get like half of the items in the game. So for me, like maybe if I play it again, like I should really play it again.
It's on Switch Online.
Yep.
I have the game. I'm good. But it's like I really have to play it again just to see. Like I remember the mini boss battles are fun and everything like that. Like Mr. Patches, I always thought was fun. But like getting like some jiggies, it's like it doesn't really tell you how to get it in a way. Like in Banjo-Kazooie, they're like, oh, it's either there, or they kind of like have like a little bit of a story with like a certain character, and it'll tell you, like with the monkey in the first level, where he's like, oh, you know, don't steal my oranges. All right, so I'm gonna steal your oranges, and I get a puzzle piece. You know,
Yep.
it's not that forward. And that's okay, like, if you like, you know, if you really want to think things out, but I think it does it too much in Banjo-Tooie, so...
Yeah.
That's why, like, I always had an issue with it, so...
If that's one of the main issues, play it on Xbox, because they added a help and options jiggy tips, where you can go and look and find out where every jiggy is for every world.
Oh, nice.
That's actually really cool. I never played Tui yet, so...
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. A game that I think is better than its reputation. I think Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is a great game. Honestly. Like, I know a lot of people are, like, very biased and against it. Because, like, there is a lot of theming to it. And, like, the pod racing actually is good in the game, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just me. But I really enjoy the game. And then another game off the top of my head that I could think of is Shadows of the Empire, which is also Star Wars.
Yeah.
Everybody says that game is too hard. You get your butt kicked. People give up once they see IG-88 and just get shot down by them. But like, I think the game is great. The story is actually really good. And a kicker for this, even in Disney lore, they said that Shadows of the Empire is legit part of the story still. So one of the few things they took over from it.
Yep.
So two questions, Yoshil.
Yes.
Who is your main in Pod Racer?
Oh God, it does change, but I actually liked oh my gosh, I forget his name off the top of my head. The bad guy from the first one.
Sebulba. Yeah,
Sebulba.
Okay. And second, how did you get through the Dianoga, the sewer level? I have a fear of the underwater sewer boss.
I don't hold A all the time.
Okay.
Oh, that's how. So the furthest I got in Shadows of the Empire was God, what's it's like a desert base or
Yes, you
something
have
like
to
that.
do-
It's,
Like you're
it's
trying to catch up the Luke so he doesn't get shot. So you have to go through the
Yeah.
desert town and then you go out into the desert and chase them.
I still have to do Shadows of the Empire and Rogue Squadron at some point.
Rogue Squadron is an incredible game, in my opinion. It's not one of my top 5, but it's definitely top 10. It's an
All right.
incredible game.
All right,
So,
cool. I'll keep that in mind.
Or not Rogue, Shadows of the Empire. I had such a fear of the sewer level. I had a tips and tricks magazine, and it showed me how to do the level select, which is a ridiculous little code where you have to like hold left for a little bit and then hold right to a little bit, just so I could go past that level to the next level.
Oh,
That was
dude, the enemies that freaked me out in that game were the Wookiee enemies.
Oh,
the
the first
Wampas?
level. You're talking about-
Yeah,
yeah. I know what you're talking about. They go really slow, but they can't get killed.
Well,
yeah.
again, it just takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
And then you're talking about Rogue Squadron, Episode 1, Battle for Naboo. I
Ooh.
really enjoyed that one.
That's a really good game too, in my opinion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
I think the thing that really trips people up, besides the IG-88 fight, because that's early game, and you still really don't know what you're doing in the game, so when he starts blasting you, you just get killed. But the really hard boss battle, in my opinion, that I've always had trouble with, was when you have to fight Boba Fett, because he flies around. But then he comes out with the Slave 1 ship, and you still have to fight him with the ship. And I'm like, bro, like, I'm a guy with a gun.
Yep.
Ow.
Yep.
It's so rough.
Yeah. But yeah, I can't really think of anything else that I would say that is not nearly as bad as his reputation makes it out to be. Oh God, hey you Pikachu.
Yeah.
But I know some people. There's one game that was mentioned by Dragon in the chat, and it's this one, the first Mario Party. Like
Oh no, I love the first Mario Party.
Me
I
too.
honestly sometimes feel like it's actually my favorite of the 3.
Yeah.
Me
I
too.
agree. I have the 3. Out of all of them, I think the first one is my favorite. But that's because I also like torture, apparently, because of my hand. But that's a whole different story.
I still love freaking Eternal Star. That's still my favorite, one of my favorite all-time Mario Party boards.
Yep.
You know what it is also with Mario Party 1? Because it was like the Wild West, and they just did whatever they wanted, where like the dice blocks could be 8, 9, 10 blocks, or 1, 2, 3 blocks, or oh, let's put a plus block, like oh, if he gets a 10, they get 10 coins. That was big back then.
Yeah.
You
No,
get 10
and
coins, you
fun
get
fact
the
for the
star.
fun fact for the Mario Party Madness, sir, we did a recent round with this on Eternal Star, and we made it so the odds of the special blocks popping up on a turn were like 80%. So almost everybody on the entire turn were getting these crazy ass blocks. It was really hilarious.
Yep.
Well, actually, funny enough, the other thing I really liked from the first one that they never brought back, because I guess I figured, it would be too unfair, is that, like, if you lost a minigame, you lose coins, and the other guy gains coins.
No, I kind of wish they would bring that back too, but
That should be in the professional mode in the new game.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That'd be amazing.
So the next question is from Dari. Would you have cared more if the N64 disk drive took off, or would you have still lived and died by the cartridge? Well, I would have been interested in seeing just where they would have went with the 64 disk drive had they had. Here's the thing. I think that they should have released it much earlier than when they did and make it worldwide. It came out towards the end of 1999, only in Japan, had quite a few games, and it got canceled. It was supposed to come out in 97. I think if they would have released it in 97, released it worldwide and marketed better, maybe we would have had something. So I would say that I think that there was potential there. They just didn't really use it. They didn't utilize it.
Yeah, because like here's the funny thing: even with US N64 consoles, there's still a slot at the bottom for the disk drive. It's just because it never came out here, it's just kind of a useless slot.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's my thing. Like, I would say that it should have existed outside Japan just to see where they could have gone with it. That's my answer.
I would have personally loved to have experimented with it also, because I heard that F-Zero also had some nice expansions to the disc drive and other fun, interesting games like Mario No Fatopia and some of the other games. So yeah, I personally would have liked to have seen what they would have done with it, but either way, I still like the cartridges. I appreciate what the cartridges brought to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
know.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I know Mario 64 had disk drive functionality, but from what I could tell, it didn't actually add anything.
It was more RAM to the system, so they were able to run games a little bit better. So like it's like kind of like an expansion pack for the system itself.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. So like for example, they were actually going to make originally Paper Mario was supposed to be a DD game.
Yeah.
And they were supposed to make it a little bit more cleaner, but they ended up when they scrapped the DD itself, that's why they released Paper Mario the way they did. But it ended up being an amazing game anyway, so they actually did the right thing. What you were talking about before, Mike, with the F-Zero game, there's a championship version where they have it for the DD. It's in Japan, but you can make your own boards, and it has extra stuff too. So
yeah, see that I heard about, and that's the one thing I would have really loved to have done.
Yep.
Actually, at the Long Island Retro, they have it there, so you should try to find it.
Next year, I should try to find that. Then I will definitely write that down in my notes.
Same.
Yeah. So my thing is that I'm in disagreement. I think what we got was fine because what they were trying to do is the technology that they were going to have, like, because they were supposed to make the N64 technically was supposed to be a PlayStation / Nintendo system. So it was supposed to be disc-based. So because that failed and PlayStation made their own thing, that's why we almost had the DD, because of that situation. That was basically what it is. Because if you think about it, those slips, like it looks like a floppy disk, those are actually CD-based cartridges, which is why with the DD games, they're actually going to expire at one point, because it has disc-based memory inside it anyway.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, I have a DD game myself. I have one of the artist games, but that's because I wanted the mouse, because the mouse comes with it. The mouse is universal. You can use it on any game. But I feel like they did the right thing by not doing it and just going forward with the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. Because if we would have just had the DD, we would have the same situation as they did with the Sega CD into the Sega Saturn.
Right.
So I think it turned out better, in my opinion, because now we have GameCube, and GameCube ends up being one of the best systems that came out with all the games that they have on it. It turned out better. We could have had Animal Crossing on the DD, but I think it was better off it was on the GameCube as a launch title, in my opinion.
Right. What about you, Andy?
I mean, I probably would have liked it either way. Having some of the capabilities I've seen of the DD and just the creativity behind it. I don't remember if it was for the DD or if it was just another canceled thing that they did, but I think it was for GoldenEye or Perfect Dark. You were able to take your picture of your face and put it on the skin.
Oh, yeah.
Fighters.
Yeah, that's something I would like to have tried out also.
That was Perfect Dark.
That was Perfect Dark. I couldn't remember. But then like the real-time clock was a big thing. So like Animal Crossing or stuff like that. I think Zelda Majora's Mask was originally for the DD and was going to use that. Some of the functionality is really cool. Most of the games that they proposed for it were put to cartridges. So in the similar vein, having it where it is now and being able to preserve them a lot better. I don't know. It's kind of I'm kind of good either way.
Yep.
Right.
All right. Next one is from Icepick. Am I the only one who wishes Nintendo had gone through with the whole original Ultra 64 branding they planned on using before release?
Yes.
Honestly, Icepick, if you're watching or listening, the answer is yes. I'm happy with N64.
Yeah, I'm fine with N64 also. Like, I love the colors that we got for it also. Like, I think it stands out more than Ultra 64. It kind of has that Nintendo wild family friendly feel also, what we got.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Ultra is too generic.
I agree.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the problem. It's very generic.
It really is.
That's like if we would have gotten the Nintendo Revolution instead of the Nintendo Wii.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit of a different vein in my opinion because if it said the Nintendo Revolution, it makes a little bit of sense because they're trying to continue on because it's a revolution of the gaming industry. The thing with the Ultra 64, there's no Nintendo branding in the title. So you say Ultra 64, oh, what is that? Some new company or whatever? It makes, you know what I'm saying? It's like saying like what is it? The OG or OWA, whatever the
Oh yeah.
thing that,
Oh, yeah.
that box was. Yeah. So it's like kind of like that same vein. Like, who cares about that? That name sucks, you know?
Yeah, Dragonframe brings up a good point. I mean, I wonder if they were going to drop the 64 and it would have been the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Super Nintendo, and then the Ultra Nintendo.
Yeah.
That would have been interesting to see, but
Like,
I'm happy with what we got.
yeah.
Oh, me too.
And they also could not use the Ultra name because Konami apparently had a trademark on it because they made a like a small company called Ultra Games as a way to bypass the limitations Nintendo had with how many games you could release on the NES per year at the time. So
Right.
so they still had a trademark, which I don't think they don't have that trademark anymore, but at the time they still did. So next one is from Derek DeBroni. Which N64 FPS games do you enjoy the most? Personally, I prefer Perfect Dark over GoldenEye, but they're both really good games.
Maybe the
I've
same company.
al-
It's the same thing. It's alright.
I've only ever played. I've only ever played GoldenEye, so
Yeah,
just have
same.
to
I,
go
I prefer GoldenEye with Mario characters.
Yep.
same.
So does Banjo Tooie count as a?
I mean,
Technically, yeah.
if we're technically going with that, I changed my official answer to that.
My favorite is Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Oh yeah.
Technically, it is.
Yep.
Is that first person though?
Oh,
It's a third. No, it's third person.
camera. Yeah, there's a camera change. Yeah.
Okay.
Like
I
I still have to play Doom 64 though.
Oh right.
That's right. And Duke Nukem 64 was on there too. I forgot about that.
I went to Ohio Game Dev, or not Ohio Game Dev. What is it called now? Or there's a retro Torg. That's what it's called here in Columbus. Last year, I got involved in a retro gaming tournament that they had there, and they had like a gauntlet of different games that you would play, and you would gather points. And so I got pulled in last second into a GoldenEye tournament. Ended up winning the game, and I'm like, I had never played this game before in my life, so I'm gonna change it to GoldenEye for now.
All right.
That's fair. Actually, they said in chat, Pokemon Snap is the best one. I'm like, I agree.
First-person shooter.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're not shooting bullets, but you're snapping pictures. I could go with that.
You're throwing apples.
Well, you're shooting
Yeah.
pictures.
Oh, wait. With that logic, can I change my answer to Star Fox 64?
Oh yeah.
You could go in the cockpit. Yes, it is a first-person shooter.
There you go.
Technically, yeah.
That's pretty funny. I like that.
Yeah. Let's see. Next one is from Clark. What's a series you wish had an entry on N64? Metroid.
Just because I really want to see the original idea for this game come to light. Earthbound 64.
Yeah.
Yes.
I kind of hinted at it already. Final Fantasy 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that would have been super interesting to see on the N64. In my opinion, I still haven't finished the game. I've only played the part 1 of the remake, so I don't know anything else after that. So no spoilers. But so far from everything I played, I'm like, I really wish that they did make an N64 version because I'm sure it wouldn't look as good as it does, but it would have been very different, and it would have been nice to see a different version. But that's in another lifetime.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll probably say Earthbound as well.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly don't have any instances. I mean, I just enjoyed all the series that we got on N64, but it might have been cool to see what a Mario basketball or another Mario sports game would have looked like on the N64, probably.
Oh, absolutely.
I love tennis. We got Waluigi.
Yep.
Oh yeah, same.
I do have one more game that I want to bring up in regards to this question. I know like this series was on PlayStation a lot, but it was on Super Nintendo. It almost had a game on N64, but it got canceled. And that series is Street Fighter. Like there was going to be a Street Fighter 64, but the game they would have used would have been the one that went 3D, Street Fighter EX. The first one.
That would have been interesting.
That was originally going to be on N64, but I would have loved to see how Street Fighter would have worked on N64, because I was doing a retro night months ago for N64 fighting games, and I'm like, man, I wish Street Fighter was on N64.
I wonder if it would play similar to like Mortal Kombat 4, where it's that pseudo 3D kind of.
Yes.
I think they would have went for it.
Yeah, they would have.
You know, now that I think about it, that's kind of a weird thought. Whereas just like, we have Resident Evil on the N64, but no Street Fighter. That's just a very, really weird thought to me.
Yeah.
You know, a weird game that's on the Nintendo 64, StarCraft. It's on the 64.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, StarCraft is on N64.
Game that works with the mouse. Actually, funny enough.
Yep.
Actually, I'm going to make you laugh, but you do have Street Fighter technically on the N64. Do you know what it is?
Fighters Destiny 2.
No, it's not. That's not that type of game. That's a Tekken game. You have Tekken in the N64, though.
Well, what is it?
Clay Fighter?
It's Clay Fighter.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I did play Clay Fighter, and I actually did enjoy Sculptor's Cut. Granted,
It's so good.
the only way
I love Sculptor's Cut.
the only way I was able to play that was through emulation, because I am not buying that game at the price that it is. But
Well, actually, you know what's funny? Like, I personally, I like the game a lot, but that's because I used to play with my brother and with my friends too. But there's like, there is a lot of stuff in the game that is like, you know, like Punch-Out-esque. Actually, you know what?
Punch Out.
I just realized Punch-Out should have been on the N64.
Yeah,
we should have had Punch-Out.
That would have been fun to see. I changed my answer to that if I wanted to figure out what unofficial series didn't get on there.
There should have been a Punch
That
Out.
would be amazing. But the only problem is like I said, the reason why I said Punch-Out is because there's like a few like racist things in Clay Fighter, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That was
The freaking one kung fu fighter. That is literally ridden with stereotypes.
Yep.
right, exactly. But my thing is like there's like a ghost character that's in the game, and he wears like a pumpkin. I think his name is like Jack or whatever.
No, Ichabod Clay.
Ichabod Clay, that's it.
Oh,
And
yeah, that.
anytime you do his anti-air, he goes, yes!
Dude, a lot of the stuff in that game does not hold up well.
It's so good, though. It's so stupid.
Yep.
No, it really doesn't hold up well, but I agree. Some of that stuff is really ridiculous.
Yep, it was a product of its time for sure.
Yeah.
See, I don't even know. Is Clay Fighter 63 or 30 even like more affordable than Sculptor's Cut?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the vanilla version is more affordable, but yeah.
I see. I'd at least grab 63 in a third worst case scenario.
Yep.
Actually, it's two different games.
Oh, really?
It's actually two different games. So Sculpture Cut is a tournament version of 63 and 1/3.
Okay.
So Sculpture Cut actually has different characters. So you know like how the licensed characters like in 63 and 1/3, they have Earthworm Jim, they have Boogerman,
Yep.
Yeah.
they have Santa in it. So those characters are not in Sculpture Cut. But in Sculpture Cut, you get characters from the Super Nintendo game. So you get Lady Liberty, you get the three kids, and the boss in 63 and 1/3 that you can't play as, playable in Sculpture Cut, which is the robot guy. The
Yeah.
mad scientist.
Oh yeah, Dr. Killen.
Yep.
Right. So it's true. It's funny enough, even though it is the same game, it's almost like a modded version of the game. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So it does make a difference. That's why the game is a lot of money, because it is a totally different game. And
Yep.
of course, Blockbuster exclusive too. But that's a whole
Yeah.
The next one is from Destiny. If you were given the opportunity to do an N64 game, what would it be and why? Like, what
If you were to create one,
to create one? Like in what context? Because I'm going to assume if you were to create one, I would create a Metroid game on the 64.
I would make Yoshils 64.
Legit make a good Snowboard Kids game that's not Snowboard Kids DS. I'd make Snowboard Kids 3.
Snowboard Kids 3 would kind of go hard. It actually would.
I mean, we
As
sort of are
much-
getting that in this day and age. Have you ever heard of slope crashers? It's a bunch of snowboarding animals in the same context.
Yeah, that's true.
Ooh, I've actually never heard of that.
You might want to go look it up. It feels very snowboard kids-esque if you miss snowboard kids.
I saw
Yeah.
Custom Robo. I saw Custom Robo.
You did see Custom Robo.
Yeah, I know. I see it. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
All right.
Nobo would be great too, actually.
So there is a version of you ever heard of the series called Super Robot Tyson? So it's Super Robot Wars. That's the English version. Have you ever heard of it or no?
Oh yeah, I have.
Okay. So for people that don't know, it is a Japanese RPG that like they go hard on the animation on, and then on top of that, they get licenses from other robot animes. So like in one they have most of them they have Gundam, but if you want like certain ones, one has Cowboy Bebop in it, one has Gurren Lagann in it, one actually has like it's crazy. Like the series is insane. There is a game on the N64 which is okay. It's not a great game. I would, in the context of the question, I would remake the game with more characters and probably better animation. So that's what I would do. I would scrap the one that they have now.
Real quick, the N64 in Japan had a Dragon Ball Z game? Because I don't think it did. I know it did on PlayStation.
Did not.
I
No,
don't believe it did. That would be interesting to see too.
like Dragon Ball 64.
It would be sick, but it would not play good.
It,
I have a feeling.
like it probably would have played. I feel like if there would have been a Dragon Ball Z game on N64, it more likely would have played closer to a game that exists on PlayStation, and that game being Dragon Ball GT Final Bout. It would have probably been a game that's like that, but on N64, and it still wouldn't have been as good. It would have been awkward to have played it on the S64 controller.
Actually, you know what? Now that I really think about it, since you said that, I feel like I don't know if you ever heard of it, but I feel like because the Dragon Ball Z games on the Super Nintendo, they were actually more RPGs than there were fighting games.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There was a series called Hyperdimension.
I've heard of Hyperdimension, and I've also heard of the Super Butoden games on the Super Nintendo.
Right. I feel like because Nintendo-wise, because PlayStation side, they had a lot more of the fighting games.
Mm-hmm.
But with the N64, I feel like they would have made a Dragon Ball Z RPG like Hyperdimension. That's what I think they would have did,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I like to preference everything with my opinion. Because,
It's all good.
Yep.
but
Oh yeah.
yeah.
What were you gonna say, Andy?
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. There was a Super Nintendo game.
There
Never
was.
went to the 64.
Yes.
You know, speaking of fighting games, you know what other fighting game I would have liked to have seen a sequel for on the N64, or maybe nowadays eventually? Rakuga Kids.
Oh yeah,
Oh my gosh.
that game is dope.
You know what? Just because we didn't get a lot of RPGs on the N64, I wouldn't have minded seeing maybe like Chrono Cross, like a Chrono Cross port to the N64 or
Ooh.
something.
That would have been cool.
Actually, that makes sense. That actually does make a lot of sense. Iggy's Wrecking Balls too.
I just thought of
Iggy's
another.
Wrecking Balls 2 would be interesting too, actually. That game was already weird enough on its own, though.
I just thought of another one. I would probably want to see Dragon Quest. There actually almost was one for N64.
On the 64 DD.
Yep. It would have been Dragon Quest 7, which did release on the PlayStation. But I probably would have also have wanted to see a Sailor Moon game on N64. Like there wasn't any.
Ooh.
That actually would be. Would you want it as an RPG, or would you rather play as a fighting game?
I think for N64, it probably would have been better as an RPG.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, because I was about to say, I am just imagining like a low poly Sailor Moon RPG.
That sounds kind of dope.
I have one more for this.
Okay.
And this series skipped the entire generation. It was not an N64, it was not a PlayStation, Saturn, Game Boy Color, or anything like that, because by then the series kind of went dormant, like because other TV shows eclipsed it. But it came back during PS2 and GameCube era because of a new show, and that series is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Imagine if there would have been a TMNT 64 4-player co-op. You and your buddies could play the game, but by then the show got canceled in '96 around the time the N64 came out, and all they had were the comics until like the 2003 series, which by then had a game for GameCube and multiple games for GameCube and PlayStation 2 and Xbox. So TMNT 64 could have been fun.
See, I thought you were going to.
We got something similar with PS2 though, with the 2003 game, but it was only 2-player co-op.
It was 2 players. Would have been interesting. This like the Ninja Turtles completely missed that generation. Yet there were Power Ranger games. There were like, I don't remember if there was a Transformers game on N64. It might have been Beast Wars. I don't remember.
Yes,
There was.
Wars. Yes.
When
Yeah,
you
from what
said
I've heard, it wasn't good.
when you said skip a generation, I thought you were talking about The Simpsons because they had NES, SNES, nothing on.
Well,
And then
The Simpsons did land on the PlayStation though.
did they?
Yeah, The Simpsons Wrestling, which is one of the worst games ever made.
And also
Okay.
Simpsons Bowling also, I think, was also, that might have just been
Was it?
arcade.
That was arcade only.
Oh, that
was-
would have been cool if they attempted like a Simpsons platformer on the N64.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. We got so the other game you're talking about is Simpsons Skateboarding. That's the other PlayStation game
Right.
too.
Oh yeah.
That game is
Oh, that's
That was a PS2.
yeah, that's PS2.
PS2. Yeah.
yeah.
We got one last question.
Oh.
And it's about the N64 controller. Did you
Okay.
always hold the N64 controller the proper way, or did you maybe prefer to hold it in some other way?
I like this question.
So the N64 technically had quote unquote 3 modes, depending on what game you were playing.
Yeah. Who's going to put the teacher hat on for this one?
Okay.
Oh,
So let us begin. There is 3 ways of holding it. One way is where you hold it in the middle with your left hand with the control stick, and on the right hand you're holding all the buttons. That is for the most common way for people to actually play most of the games. However, there is some games that use the control pad instead of the control stick. So what you would do is you take your left hand and grab it all the way to the left of the controller. That is how you play some other games that use the control pad opposed to the control stick.
Kirby 64, I believe.
Correct. That is an example. You do have a third way, and most people don't do this, but you can also use the control pad and the control stick at the same time. That is for actually, from what I
The
remember.
Ekans mini game from Pokemon Stadium.
Correct. So there you go. So that is how the 3 ways to control it. Like I said, the most common is left hand in the middle, right hand on the right. Especially if you're going to play a racing game, that is usually the common way of doing it. But people have their own ways of doing it. Like if you're playing a fighting game, some people like to claw the controller on the top right, because what they'll do is they claw hand the buttons to play like almost like an arcade pad.
Yeah.
So you could do that
So
too.
fun fact, I only have 4 fingers on my right hand. I have no thumbs, so that's how I've had to play with that controller my entire life, is the claw style. And I literally play it for every single game I've ever played, whether it's a racing game or any game like that, because I'd usually have my pinky on the R button, and then I'd have my pointer and my middle finger on all the other buttons to go back and forth between them, and I'd use my left stick to control the stick.
Damn, that's crazy. I didn't even like think of that. Like
I was gonna
actually,
say,
funny enough, there's some people that have an issue with gripping the middle. So what they'll do is like, and I've done this before too. This is how I actually first started playing because I didn't know what I was doing. I was holding the controller with my right hand, and I would have all my pressure on my right hand. And then what I would do is go to the top of the control stick and actually hold it like from the top instead. So that's how I used to play some games also. Like it gives you a little bit more accuracy when you're playing certain games like Super Mario 64. It's very strange, but I kind of did it when I was a kid, and then I realized what I was doing, and then I held it in a correct quote-unquote position. But that's why I like the N64 controller. It's very different than every other controller, and there's nothing like it even now. So,
Oh no, it's still one of my favorite controllers of all time, just for how unique this design is.
right. A lot of people don't like it though. It's very hit or miss. It's never in the middle.
Yep.
I am also
Like,
left-handed, but this feels natural to me. It's so funny. Like a lot of other people who have gotten the new like gamer pad fighter stick Nintendo 64 controllers, then they're playing it like this, and I'm like, this looks weird. This feels weird. I want my Trident.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like the N64 was designed with the 3-prong controller in mind, so it's like when you use any other more traditional controller, just something feels off.
Like for me, I am a righty, but the way I play the games, I didn't really think to use the middle until later. I mainly just play it like this, like just my left hand on this side and my right hand on this side, while still using this controller in the middle over here, and then like playing with these buttons right here. But I don't mind playing it like this. To be honest with you guys, it's just this. I'm gonna be very straight up. I know a lot of people love this controller, but for me, I think this is a very awkward controller for someone like me, and especially considering the fact that I also have big hands. I mean, it may not look it on the screen, but I do have pretty big hands, and I will say it's still better than the Xbox controller.
So, did you guys ever read the manuals for the Nintendo 64 games when you got them back in the day?
I did not.
I did not know.
I did not either.
So, when you open up any Nintendo 64 manual, with the first page or two has a section that shows you, with an outline, how to hold each controller. Most of them, obviously, they're like, hold it this way. So, it's just really funny that, for me, because again, growing up, I was the nerd who we'd go to Walmart or Kmart or wherever I'm buying the game from, Toys R Us.
Yep.
And on the way home, I'm opening the box, I'm reading the manual, and I'm doing it front to back to just have it ready by the time I can put that game in. So I just think it's funny that there's all these different configurations on how to play a game. There is an official right way to hold a Nintendo 64 controller. Just
Yep. All right.
That is funny.
Yes.
Actually, what's funny also is I have a couple of the peripherals for the N64. So like I have like the fishing rod and everything like that. So it's so funny because the question is very general on just the regular controller, but if you talk about the other controller, it's like, all right, now we're getting somewhere. Because some of those controllers are dumb as hell. I actually have there's like a power glove for the N64.
Yep.
And like there's like kind of like a saddle that has all the buttons on it, and you kind of like grip it with your hand and you hold it in your hand, and that's how you play some of the games like that too.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
all right. I just have very strong opinions about the Nintendo 64 controller.
Yep.
I feel you on that.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So that's all the questions, which means that's going to do it for the podcast. And again, I have to thank Mike, Andy, Yoshils, Rox for joining in. I really appreciate you guys coming in.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, of course, for having me as always, Pete.
Hey, no problem. Before we wrap things up, Mike, where can we find you?
You won't find me on Twitter anymore because that platform is going to garbage. So I'm on Blue Sky now. So you can find me there. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, all that other good stuff. I have an entire like socials page on my Twitch page. I also do gameplay for people that if you guys need gameplay, I do recordings for people and other stuff. So and potentially I might have a 3D printing shop next year. So maybe it's still in the works a little bit.
Yep. All right. What about you, Andy?
Well, if you want to find me here on Twitch, I do stream Bundy.
You were cutting out a minute.
Oh, was I cutting out?
Yeah, go
Okay.
start up.
All right. So if you want to find me, I do stream on Twitch, twitch.tv/Andy_. Bundy. I also have my own website, andybundy.net. There you can find all my socials. Most recently started a Blue Sky. Also on Threads, not as often, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. You name the platform, there's a good chance I have some sort of presence there.
Yep. What about you, Yoshils?
All right, so I do stream here on Twitch. Currently, at the moment, I'm playing Mario and Luigi Brothership. The game is amazing. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
Yes.
I also do have a TikTok, and I also do have an Instagram where I post a lot of my collection stuff that I've done recently. So, like, all my collection, like, I'm posting videos of my games and cards. And then also, I do have a Blue Sky, and Blue Sky I think is better in my opinion, like way better. So, yeah.
Nope.
My Twitter is discontinued basically, so I'm one of those people too.
Yep. And what about you, Rox?
I stream on Twitch here at Rox_the_cat. Though it's incredibly rare when I do. I'm also on YouTube and Twitter and Blue Sky, but just like everyone else, my Twitter is just kind of a dead page at this point. So go follow me on Blue Sky if you want to see some of my artwork and stuff.
Yep. All right. And you can pretty much find me on everywhere within the stratosphere except for Twitter. I ended up like logging off of Twitter, and I am no longer, and I also set it to private, so I am no longer using nor advertising it. So therefore, I'm not on there, but you can still follow me on Blue Sky. You can still follow me on pretty much everywhere else that I'm on, where I do daily streams on Monday through Thursday from 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern until midnight, with the occasional Sunday stream or the very rare Friday stream. The next episode of Share with Shellshock is not going to happen until December 6th, and that one is going to be Marvel versus Capcom. And then I have one on December 8th, which will be gaming and pop culture in our 30s and beyond. That one will be a fun topic too. And then after that is going to be the season finale, which will be the best games of 2024, which will have the majority of people who were guests from this particular season. So stay tuned for that. And that one will be exciting to have.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah. But yeah, like there's the raid call and everything, so that's gonna do it. But for Mike, Andy, Yoshils, Rox, I'm gonna quickly deafen in just a moment because I do want to talk to you guys for just a little bit after this. But for everybody else, thank you all so much for tuning in. Make sure to take care of yourselves, be awesome, stay awesome, tell your loved ones you love them, check out them as always, fight for a lasting peace, and I'll see you guys next time. And again, thank you guys. Thank you, Mike, Andy, Yoshils, Rox. Once again, I appreciate this, as always. And y'all have a good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Bye.
Good night.
Boy.